Welcome to the Opportunity Roundtable. The Aiken Board of Realtors has gathered decision makers, influencers, and investors to discuss the Opportunity Zone program instituted by Congress, which is a program designed to help communities foster infill development, expand housing opportunities, and bring communities together through revitalization projects. How can the City of Aiken benefit from the Opportunity Zone program? How do zoning classifications, use tables, and regulations need to change? What bars to entry can be eased to help investors more quickly and frequently engage in projects? To answer those questions and talk about what opportunity zones mean for our community, we bring you the Opportunity Roundtable. Hello and welcome to Aiken's Opportunity Zone Roundtable. The Aiken Board of Realtors is happy to sponsor discussions with our elected officials, investors, and fellow realtors so we can take Aiken to the next step in the next millennium. Joining us today, we have Mayor Rick Osbon, Councilman and Realtor Ed Girardeau, Entrepreneur Katie Lipscomb, Realtor Jacob Klarman, and Investor Dexter Price. Thank you all for being here.
My pleasure.
As we talk about opportunity and the opportunity zones, there are a lot of different things that can come into play. And what can the city do, Mayor, to help attract investment in the opportunity zones?
Well, first of all, thank you, Jane Page. Thanks to the Board of Realtors for having us here today. Opportunity zones are a great mechanism. In fact, I don't know that the senators actually knew whenever they were putting these together exactly the impact that they would have on communities. But I think first and foremost, it's important to know that opportunity zones are designed for the private sector. You know, what we can do is, first of all, we're very fortunate to actually get one of them. The city of Aiken was one of the first municipalities, if not the first, to reach out to the governor. In fact, whenever they were announced, we wrote a letter to the governor saying we want to have one of our tax census as an opportunity zone. They said, well, we don't even have that in place. Wait a second, we got to talk to Commerce. So our staff did a great job of positioning us, and I think it was those early lobbying efforts that actually got us named with one. Following that, though, I mean, I think the important thing is what can you do with it? Now that you have it, what do you do with this prize that we have? You know, so we were very lucky to work with, I think, the Thomas P. Miller and Associates came in. We got a grant from Commerce to deal with that. So they came in and actually talking to landowners, talking to stakeholders, and kind of a visioning process of what could be. And we're looking forward to getting the end result of that project soon. And they'll actually take it a step further and put it towards people who have funds who they're looking to invest some of these capital investments. So I think that's where we're at. I hope we see results from that work, but it's an exciting time, certainly.
So that's bringing dollars from outside of our area in through opportunity funds. But Dexter Price, you're an investor in properties, you and a group of investors who got on the Opportunity Zone bandwagon very early, started buying up some properties to start rehabbing. Do you see this as a project that you're going to stay committed to and do infill development and redevelopment like you've started?
Absolutely. When we look at the potential that Aiken has, especially when we think about going toward Highway 1 and Highway 19, there's some real opportunity there, pun intended. And I think funds like these really give us a chance to highlight those areas, but also the roundtables that we've been able to bring together over the past few months. They've really brought ideas to the table. You've got people like Katie Lipscomb who are fighting to make things happen, more events, more activity in those areas. Now what we've got to do is figure out a way to get people excited about investing, and what better way to do that than to be able to defer some of your capital gains. You can take some of that money and reinvest it into an area that they have not seen that area prior to that legislation being passed.
Ed Girardeau, as a real estate agent and an appraiser and a city councilman and a leader in the Realtor Board of Realtors in Aiken, what do you see as you watch all of this come at you? Where do you think, if you could have a magic wand and invest money in a project, where would you put that project?
Well, I think it's interesting to piggyback a little bit on what Dexter just said. There's opportunity within this area on the north side of Aiken that's not being taken advantage of. And what the Opportunity Zone does is it calls attention to an area that has the ability to have single-family residential, the renovation of older homes that are within walking distance of downtown. You've got areas of new development, of new residential subdivisions, of new multifamily subdivisions, of commercial development. It goes on and on and on, and it's a great area. University Parkway, anything around Aiken High School. Aiken High School is a brand new high school, and we're not taking advantage of that because we're so geared and centric to the south side where the development has occurred for the last 30, 40 years. The time has come for it to move to the north and to the east. The west runs into Graniteville, there's nowhere to go there, and the south is pretty much taking care of itself. So that's where the opportunity lies.
And Katie Lipscomb, as an investor who purchased property in the northeastern part of Aiken, how have you seen that area change in the last 2 years? And what are your plans to continue to revitalize that area?
When everybody's been talking, the common thought going through my brain is that we are talking about these areas. And just talking about them is basically marketing them and getting people to think about what they could be. And even when we did the Tim Scott Opportunity Zone thing, when the video was playing, people walked out of there and they really realized what this area was. I mean, you fly over 6 Points, which is in the county, but you look at it and you go, wow, that's the wild, wild west. It could be all kinds of things. And so people are just starting to think. And I've been doing a market once a month, 1 weekend a month, for the past year and a half. And that's getting people in the neighborhood, looking around, having antique people come in and go, look at that house over there. That would be an adorable antique shop. So talking about getting mixed use going. And it's just marketing, really.
And as Aiken grows, we need the young leaders of our community to step up. And one of those young leaders that's stepping up is you, Jacob Klarman, with the Aiken Board of Realtors. What is the thing that you think investors and the city and your fellow realtors can do to continue to attract young married couples that are starting out in their life like you?
Well, you can just keep things modern. You know, we can still have the old charm with having modern touches. You know, if we really focus on the things that are actually bringing people here, you know, there's all these great industries around Aiken, but people are choosing to live in Aiken, and I think that's a very good thing that says Aiken has, you know, potential. You know, people like it. You know, one thing about the opportunity zones that we didn't even think about was what about all the areas around the opportunity zones that are going to be brought up because those areas are brought up. You know, we were just talking in the office earlier about a property and they say, well, this one's in the opportunity zone, but it's not. But once that gets going, you know, somebody might see this opportunity zone now as like, wow, that's a great thing. I can really do something there because other things are coming in. So it's got a nice domino effect, in my opinion.
The other thing I keep thinking is opportunity zone, the tax reform, is really only one tool. And what we're actually doing is sort of organically planning these neighborhoods together, because not everybody's going to have capital gains, but they're still going to invest because that's the real domino effect.
And the caveat to that is the regulation is whatever you defer in your capital gains, you have to make an equal investment into it. So it's not like people are just going and buying property and it stays dilapidated. They're coming back in and they're having to make that equal reinvestment. So when we think about property appreciation, and especially the people who get in early and buy their home or buy their land early, they really have an opportunity for some upward mobility and some wealth, just to be candid, for them to be able to participate down the road. So, for sure.
We're sitting in the old firehouse for the city of Aiken. So when we think about revitalizing properties and we think about how investors see that happening, is there something that the city can do regulatory-wise or investment-wise or partnership-wise for investors that will help them make that commitment? Is that something that you want to talk to Dexter or Jacob?
I could say one thing, but it'd be more about the Section 8 problem that we're probably about to run into with the Han Village. You know, the city and the county, you know, they have some things that they can do. Ultimately, those are federal programs, but you know, the city and the county can look at, you know, their tax structure, you know, the way our taxes are built for investment versus primary residence. You know, maybe there's something they can do there to entice people to, you know, upgrade the housing, make sure that people are living better, and once they're living better, they're feeling better, they're doing better. You know, that's something that the city could look into, you know, on its own without having to, you know, really co-opt with any bigger agency, in my opinion.
I'm not sure that properties have to identify with the city that they're Section 8 or not.
They don't.
They don't, but if they did, if there was an incentive too, and say, look, you know, investors, they like to invest in property because, you know, essentially you can make all the money in the meantime and nothing happens to it at the end. You know, you don't have to burn it down once you're done using it. But, you know, a lot of people are wary of doing low-income housing and things. If they're able to save, you know, if you could talk them into saying, look, you're going to save the money on the taxes by renting to these folks who need help. They need help, you know, and they see people are not renting to them, and that's a hard thing. And being in a business that deals with that, I know how hard it is to say, you know, I'm sorry, we're just not, my owner doesn't accept that, or whatever the case may be. You know, the city, you know, maybe they say, you know, look, come in and tell me, show me, prove it that you're renting to somebody with a voucher, and we'll help you out on the taxes because you're doing something to help people. So it's like helping one, help the other, and everybody gets helped in the meantime.
I think a lot of homeowners in that area are worried about the tax appreciation and how that millage rate could increase over time. And they're saying, well, these communities are being gentrified, but what they're not looking at on the other end is the property value appreciation. And how can we get more people from subsidized housing into home ownership? And what paths can we build to get there? Either whether it's working with realtors to figure out some type of, and banks to figure out some type of programs to get people into owning their own homes. On DuPont Landing has a pretty cool concept with them being able to be in a program, but after I guess 15 years, they're working toward owning their own home. But how do we get people on that pathway rather than feeling like, okay, these improvements are happening, where do I go?
And that's a great model. Actually, I guess that was the Nehemiah group that put that together with Second Baptist, and it really is a successful model that we've seen right here in Aiken also. Because you're right, home ownership is the ultimate goal of what we're looking for. And that's, I think some things, going back to your original question, I mean, I've been very proud of our staff bringing some initiatives forward. I can tell you, we just had a second reading, our last meeting of a property that was it was an abandoned building. 66% of it qualifies as abandoned building if it wasn't used. Our staff did the research to prove that. Got the abandoned building tax credit for it. We put some local incentives together for it now. I think we're looking at 4 or 5 units of residential right in the area where we're talking about developing is east of right of our downtown. So housing is certainly something that we all hear and see in our downtown area. We recognize that as one of our priorities. So it's been really nice to see these pockets. I think we could do the same thing for as we develop some of our upstairs through our downtown also. So I think we have a lot of real opportunities to expand even our housing, and I think that's what the city can do is help aid an investor who may not have the time or ability to go and research to find, well, what state tax credits are there available, and what can we do locally. And I think that's an important factor. And I think I've really seen from our staff that there's a desire to find a way to say yes, and say, how can we say yes, as opposed to saying we can't do it that way.
And one thing that we might really want to look at, and I don't know if we need to or not, but I just would like to know if we need to look at it, is does our zoning in these areas, could we put 6 little cottages on a half an acre? Mm-hmm. Can we build smaller houses so that they're more affordable to buy into, and you hope that they turn over and people are moving up, kind of thing? But I don't know if our zoning laws allow that or not.
Well, I think Councilman Girardeau, you and I had a conversation recently about one of your listings that might be in the light industrial zone, where that upper story living and a change of zoning or an addition to the use table might be beneficial to the development of that property.
And that's in the opportunity zone, and what the mayor's speaking to, that's not in the opportunity zone. That's a little bit of outside the opportunity zone, But again, all tides lift all the boats in the same direction. And that's an old office building that we're talking about. Now it's going to be 4 residential units. What you're referring to is the corner of Williamsburg and Richland Avenue, and developing that into multi-things, into residential and commercial. The farmers market's right there. There's an opportunity to do a lot of different things. Don't know whether it's the tiny house format. I'd have to look at all of that as to.
Well, I don't think tiny house, but
smaller,
the density
condominium
on the, yeah.
type of thing.
And the setbacks and the density and the percentage of open space within
And it's all related,
those lots,
it's stormwater related when you fill up too much of the lot, but there's some innovative stormwater stuff going on over there. It's all part of a story, and that's what I was talking about, marketing this area and helping people, sharing the good news of good things that are happening, and it'll just start steamrolling.
Well, that's true. I think Fairfield Street is a great example of a street in Aiken, which is only a couple blocks from downtown, and you're seeing people taking the older houses and renovating them, and it's an ongoing process. And as they have success in turning those over and people actually buying the houses and living there, that's going to upgrade the rest of the houses. More people are going to want to do it. We've seen that in residential development in the 80s and the 90s. Subdivisions would start, the homes might have started in the, let's just say for this example, $75,000 a house. By the time they finished it out, the houses were now at $150,000, but not because of gentrification or because they're building bigger, more expensive houses, because people are adverse to risk, and the risk isn't there now. I've got solid neighbors. This is a solid neighborhood. I'm going to build a bigger house than the one that started with, and it doesn't hurt the little ones. The little ones become more valuable overall scheme of things, and that's the way it's worked in the past, and that can happen within the opportunity zone as well.
We're joined by Aiken native Peggy Penland, whose family developed the Hounds Lake neighborhood. Peggy, you are also a member of the Aiken Board of Realtors and have listings in the Opportunity Zone. If you had a suggestion to give to the city about what your investors would want to see in that area, what would it be?
Here's what I see. I have a couple of listings. I have another really good one coming down the pike, and one of them is zoned for single-family residential. And what we need is affordable housing, and maybe not single-family. We need affordable apartments, condos, that kind of thing. So what I could see that the city could do to help the most is to help figure out a way. Obviously, you don't know who's going to buy it or what they want, but to streamline the process, whether it be rezoning, special exception, variance. I've been through that over the years, and sometimes it's very, very lengthy and difficult. So I think we have a great asset in Ryan Bland now as the city planning director, and I would like to see the realtors, the investors, and the city work together to streamline the process.
Katie, I believe you have an anecdotal reference for how that could look in the future.
I'm big on looking at the processes and making it easy because I have a regular business. I'm not a developer. I'm one of these people that's an incremental, sees a project, I'm willing to invest in this area. My business will be part of it, but I'm not a developer. But yesterday, at my property, I'm doing a little project. I'm building 10 tiny shops on a half an acre with a shared use bathroom. There's a cottage existing. I am doing something odd outside of regular building styles. It's 2 lots. I had to combine them. I've got stormwater concerns because I want to put them on slabs so that I don't have to put in handicap because these are tiny houses and I don't. It's just a unique situation. So yesterday, building inspections, planning department, engineering, stormwater, public safety, business advocate, we had a whole group of people at my property. Some of them had already heard the story, but I had an opportunity to share my plan with everybody one time and get everybody's input at the same time. Versus I was afraid that I was going to have to go explain it to each department and work with them one-on-one. So in the course of probably an hour and a half, we saved all of us probably 20 hours of time in the process. But that little bit of time for that meeting was immensely helpful, and everybody, there was a concern, everybody had an idea, and when we left, everybody was on the same page. You can't believe how much better I feel today, because I would wake up in the morning and go, I need to go see so-and-so, and then I would go, no, not today. I mean, it's just like, I was prepared for the meeting with everyone because I knew it was important, versus I might not have been prepared for every little one, because you're busy. It was just a great situation.
Katie, I'm going to say I was so happy to hear that meeting occurred, and I certainly want to thank our staff who put that together and facilitated it with you. For someone who is an entrepreneur, a small business person, we don't develop every day, so we're not quite sure what the checklist is and the boxes that we have to go through.
Yeah.
So by bringing everybody to you in one stop, it makes it so much easier, because when you leave one office, I can tell you, it's a complicated.
Gotta go to
Yes.
everybody else.
Absolutely.
You gotta go see so-and-so. No, they told me to
Absolutely.
come see you.
And I think what you experienced is the exact model that we're trying to put forward. And Peggy, I think that will move things in a faster way. But I think we need to go even further from somebody who has a project who has to go through planning and advertising. Then they have to go to council. Sometimes there's gaps. If a certain date falls on a certain week, there's gaps where it may take somebody 3 to 4 months before their project can take fruition, and they're ready to spend the dollars right then. And those are the kind of things also that as a city we have to examine those processes. You know, there's a saying that says if it's not broke, don't fix it. But sometimes I think you need to break things so you can make them better.
Every single person who you deal with in these things that you're doing every day when you're trying to do a project is super nice. It's not that they're not nice, it's the processes they're working within. So if we could fix the processes, then everyone would be happy.
So I'm going to ask a question of Ed Girardeau. If you could have an unlimited budget, what would be the one project that you would do, and where would it be?
I think I know.
Wow. Where to start?
You can only pick one, Ed. You know.
What were you thinking?
Well, it's your question, Ed.
I know, but it's all of ours all together. We can go through a litany of things, from the hospital and things such as that, the old hospital, and having no budget. That's like the building. If you wanted to save that building, if you had no budget at all, you can spend all the money you want to. You build something extravagant from that perspective. But you've got to do it all within reason of where do you go from here. I would probably spend it on the expansion of downtown away from Lawrence Street. I've been an advocate of moving it down Park Avenue to make Main Street more than just Lawrence Street. And really, we've got the block of Lawrence Street, Richland Avenue, Newberry Street, and Park Avenue extended up to Union Street. Incorporate the train station into everything and make the parks accessible and vibrant, and add lights. I'm sure that's one of the things that I've talked about that all the time, of more street
They're
lights.
coming.
Well, we're getting street lights. Will they be enough? Will I say you've got to add more than this? Probably so. And that's where the budget comes in. Parkways down Richland Avenue that intersect all the way from the east to the west, that you can actually walk through the parkways with lighting and the whole 9 yards. It'd be amazing what we could do in the downtown area if we had no limit to the amount of money we could spend. We could put up lights within the parkways and make them accessible, rather than just having giant islands with giant azaleas in the middle of them where you can't see the other side. Make them useful for the entire community.
One of the big things that came out of the Ideas Collaborative that we hosted, the Aiken Board of Realtors hosted during the Aiken City Limits Festival, was that Aiken doesn't have a free dog park. We have the SPCA park, but you have to pay, and your dog you have to pay per dog, and so there's some people who just financially can't afford to do that. So the idea was to take one of the parkways, find a fencing company that would donate the fencing, reach out to several projects, grants, and create a fenced-in dog park in one of the parkways and have it be near some of the blocks that have been undeveloped as of yet in the Opportunity Zone, because Aiken is a dog-friendly town. So it becomes an asset to developing that area. Jacob, if you had to come up with a pet project, pun intended, what would you say, hey, it would be great to do this in Aiken?
Well, obviously, one of the great things about downtown is that it's a lot of foot traffic. So I do think that I'd like to piggyback on Ed's idea of the parkways, in between, the streets. There ought to be a way that you can walk down those, and that is effectively another sidewalk. I mean, I think that helps people. The dogs obviously will love to walk on grass much better than they would love to work on concrete. Now, I don't exactly know where I'd go with a pet project per se, but I do think that those are open areas that we're not using. They're obviously beautiful. People would love to be inside of them, not just to drive by them all the time. And I think that is something that's a great idea actually, and I hadn't heard that yet, but I loved hearing it just now.
Glad I made that up.
Yes,
while I was
thank you.
sitting here.
So,
No,
Peggy
I mean,
Penland.
she talked about that before.
What would, if you had an unlimited budget and you could put it in any project, where would you put it?
I have 3. But first of all, I'd like to see York Street cleaned up. There's some really nice improvements going on there, new development, more to come, but there's some awful looking stuff too. And when you think about all the people coming in from I-20 on York, coming into our city, there's not a very welcoming feeling as you come in. Same thing from Augusta on what I call the Aiken-Augusta Highway, number 1. But the pet project that I would like to see would be to connect the neighborhoods to the downtown so that somebody could actually get on a bicycle or get on a sidewalk and walk to downtown Aiken. And it can be done. It's just going to take a lot of collaboration, and I firmly believe that would just totally transform the city.
So, Mayor, if you could decide one area that the Opportunity Zone funds would do, which block would you say, hey, that would be a great project?
It would be at York and Hampton, through that area down to Rutland, in that area. I think there are I think they're great. I don't want to say the word opportunity in an opportunity zone, but you can't help it. I think there's great opportunities that we could have through that whole area. I agree with Peggy. Cleaning up our entryways is such an important part of it also, and it's Richland Avenue both east and west. It's York Street coming in. It's also 18. I mean, more people come from the Atlanta direction. More people take 18 into Aiken than 22. Exit 22. So I think we need to approach evenly signage, letting people know when they get to Aiken, recognizing it, and making our statement. We have to work harder on that first impression, because when they get downtown, we know they're gonna love it.
Yeah.
We know that.
But you want to get them there.
But we got
But it's far away.
we have to overcome an impression right now that it doesn't really represent who we are, I don't think. So I think that's something that we have to work on. So,
Jacob, you had something you wanted to add.
Well, and I think that's a great thing that the opportunity zones are going to help with, because, where's the interstate? It's north of Aiken. So all those opportunity zones in between downtown and the freeway are going to make a big difference, because those are the areas that, there's so much of it. The city probably doesn't even go all the way to the freeway.
No, it doesn't.
It's
so
water service does.
It's water service does.
Sewer gets
Sewer
up.
does.
So you have to collaborate with the county on that, which is something obviously we can do. I mean, we've got City of Aiken, we've got Aiken County. They can work together to do things. But that's a lot of area to cover, and I think that that's a good thing that we need to start looking into, because, people travel on interstates, and so if it takes them, 10 minutes going through what appears to be rural, kind of downtrodden areas, it does hurt us a lot.
Well, Jacob is exactly right, and I will say, I mean, the story of Aiken is a unique one. Almost every city or municipality grows towards the thoroughfare that it comes to. So our I-20, it would make sense that the city would grow to the north.
Yeah.
Although we had this phenomenon called Savannah River site,
Exactly.
and with 25,000 at one point, over 25,000 employees, and so everything grew to the south, which was the way people went to the site. But I think we're seeing a correction in that now. And so I do think we have an opportunity now to move that. And I think you'll see that's the way, as Councilman Girardeau said, that's the way the city will grow. It's going to be to the east. It's going to be to the north. I mean, that's a natural way. So it is important that we as a council and as a city are thinking ahead and saying we need to get our utilities down there, because I think that's where development's going to happen. If you look at Exit 5 off of North Augusta, if you look at along the way, that's exactly where development is going to happen for our city, and we need to be prepared for that by putting infrastructure in place and having it there. So I do think it's important that we think about those areas coming into our cities.
And we've talked about it at the city of that idea. Exit 22 offers a tremendous opportunity, and we do have water out there and we have sewer out there, and we've sort of set in place some ideas as to how we can do it and get there and develop Exit 22. That roars back down what is extension by extension York Street. That's Highway 1. All the way out to the interstate, it will come roaring back down to the city, which is in the Opportunity Zone, from the south side of Rutland Drive all the way over to Richland. That's where the Opportunity Zone exists right now. And that's what you're mostly talking about, of York Street and that area of the development of it. And it can happen. And really, if I went even further, I'd take it all the way to Cracker Barrel, through the Rudy Mason Parkway, down Pine Log Road, over to the project where we're working on it every day, where Cracker Barrel connects to Powder House Road up to Pine Log. All of that is underway. It's painstakingly slow. If I could take all the money I could get and put it into that project, that one thing, and that's a lot of money. Just the part where we go from Cracker Barrel to Powder House Road is incredible how expensive it is. But it opens up so much to us on the east side and the north side.
It's 400 undeveloped acres.
Yeah.
But even more importantly, aside from that, it's also a 21% traffic reduction in one of our most congested areas.
So as the state of South Carolina looks at a $1 billion surplus this year because of the expansion of our state manufacturing, each municipality and county will be asking for funds. It does seem like the Pine Log expansion project over the Watson land is a great thing for the city to go plant their flag on. As we've done these talks, we've looked at the next step and the next action step, and listening to everybody today, there are two things that I kind of think have come out of this conversation, and one is that we could do these gambits of city employees that deal with development partners, and so have each of those 8 people that represent the department that needs to help a developer figure out where they want to go, and maybe have a monthly work session, working coffee, where a person with an idea can come in and sort of run the gambit of those folks and figure out if their project can work or not work, or figure out what their next steps need to be. And maybe that's an idea to take forward. And then another idea to take forward, I think I've heard Peggy talking about bike lanes, and Ed and Jacob talking about the parkways, and the mayor again talking about York Street and expanding towards the interstate. Doing more with the Department of Transportation to create memorandums of understanding, to allow us to maybe go think outside the box and have an Aiken entryway out 8 miles away at those interstate entrances into the city of Aiken. Maybe it's the state level needs to be a little more responsive to the way Aiken is developing, so that we can put our best foot forward. And so I want to thank all of you all here, because you've inspired me to find out what the next regulatory change needs to be. But also, I think you're going to inspire the viewers to invest in Aiken, whether it's monetarily or physically, emotionally, and to encourage their friends to come and live and develop here. So thank you all for being here. And thank you to the Aiken Board of Realtors for sponsoring the Opportunity Zone Roundtable today.